Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guests. I got to tell you something, people. Something very funny happened. You know how Joanne is sort of OCD and a clean freak? Well, I get a text the other day, and she says how our garbage disposal is backed up. And now, let me tell you, I've lived in my place for 9 years, and before she moved out here, my garbage disposal never clogged up. In the 2 years she's been here, 4 times. So she had just cleaned the sink. She was all bummed. And I look, and she said she put pasta down the garbage disposal. So I did a search of the things you should not put in a garbage disposal. And I found out that 4 of them are things that we do. Well, she does. Banana peels, coffee, lemons or limes, and pasta. And so if you people are homeowners or renters, don't put that stuff down because it screws up your garbage disposal, and it's a pain in the ass when they come on a Saturday morning to take care of it. So anyway, we have a great show today. I'm very excited to have my guest. He's an excellent actor. He's been around for a long time, and I found out he was a very good pianist as a kid. And my guest is Scott Cohen. How you doing, Scott?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. So we had a little problems on Skype, but we got you on here now.
It's technology. It's more difficult than you imagine.
Well, it's weird because as we get older, you think, you'd think it would become easier, but all of a sudden, like if I get a problem on my computer, I freak out because I have no idea what to do. I mean, it blows my mind.
Yeah, I have a son who's really good at it. So he's the sometimes the first resource, most of the time the last resource.
Right.
And then he just gives me like a sentence and it's all fixed. And it's like, oh, okay, thanks.
Now you're a New York guy. You were born in the Bronx, I believe.
Yep.
And so, how did this whole acting thing start? I believe your dad was a jazz musician and your mom was a teacher, or?
Yeah. How did the acting thing start?
Well, how did your whole the career in the arts? Because I know I read you were a very good piano player.
Yes. Yeah. My father was a musician. Music was in our family my whole life as a child. I mean, my oldest brother, there's 5 of us, and my oldest brother's a musician, a fairly well-known classical musician. And he actually was the first person to teach me piano. And then everybody in the house played music, and there was music constantly around. And my father was kind of a he gigged, so he was always away. And then he also taught high school music, and so he on the weekends he would often take me to wherever he was playing, and so I would kind of hang out with him as kind of his roadie. But I think that we just grew up in a very artistic household. There was no real kind of like we were just immersed in music and art and all kinds of things like that. And it wasn't like it was more kind of a blue collar kind of feel to it, not necessarily kind of like an elite form of what art was, but just we were just more kind of engaged in the practice of it, not necessarily in the appreciation of it, but I mean the appreciation I think came much later, but definitely in the practice. So I mean I think that's how it started. And in terms of acting, for me it was never a conscious choice. It was always it's not like I fell into it, but I feel like that I never made a choice to do this. It just kind of found me, and I found myself really enjoying it.
Well, what were your choices like in high school? Like, what did you when you went to college? What did you want to study? I mean, and I always talk to guests about this.
Yeah.
And it's so funny.
So when I was in high school, I did plays. I was like in the drama club, and I did plays, but I never ever thought of doing it as a career. And in 9th grade, I did. There was a guy who came into the high school who was an alumnus from the high school, who came in. He was an actor in New York, and he was doing his thing, and he came in and he directed a Bertolt Brecht play, A Man's a Man. And I don't know what happened to me, but like I was 14 at the time, and I guess he cast me in a part, but I don't know if it didn't really matter what part I was playing, but whatever part I played, I made suggestions for how I thought the character could kind of be more involved in the play. And everything that I said, he was like, "Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great." So it was like my first experience in kind of being being in the creative process, and it was just such enormous fun, and really one of the best experiences I've ever had on stage, and that really that gave me a bug for, like, I think the creativity of it, the kind of the, like, in terms of drama, not necessarily quote unquote acting, but in terms of like what drama can do and what I can do with it, and how I can be involved in, writing and directing and acting and all this other kind of stuff. And so I kept on doing that in high school. But in high school, I was a bit of I really wanted to play. My dream was to be a college football player.
Okay.
So that's all I really thought about. But that ended by the time I was a senior in high school.
What position were you?
Yeah, what?
What position?
Quarterback.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're a good-looking guy, tall. That makes sense. It all comes together.
Yeah, I could tell you more, but I won't. And so by the time I got into college, I wasn't really. It wasn't something that I was thinking of doing. But I found I actually got into clowning, and I started doing clown work in circuses and for solo clowning, and I was really interested in that. And I was about to go to Paris to study with Jacques Lecoq, and then I kind of got into this improvisational theater company where I went to college, and they were doing dramatic improvisation, not like the Groundlings or Upright Citizens Brigade or anything like that, but real kind of like almost therapeutic dramatization of people's stories. And I became really, really involved and really interested in that. And from there, I just kind of went into the theater department thinking, this is how I think, this is what I do, this is what, this is kind of the life I want to be leading. And it really became about, creating. It wasn't about, like, I didn't want to be, this type of actor. I didn't look up to, like, movie actors. I didn't look up, I really kind of like was in love with the idea of creating. And so, and that's basically how it started.
So you're into the idea of creating. Now you graduate college?
I did.
Okay, and so then what do you sit there and think you want to do? You want to be in the creative process? Are you a little bit deciding, where do you go when you know what you want to do?
Yeah.
But it's a hard mountain, and I think a lot of times what happens is, I know school prepares us, if you're go to acting school, theater in college, I think a lot of times we still don't know how to make it happen. So what are your first steps when you get out of college to sit there and figure out really, okay, I want to concentrate on this?
Well, the thing that I think really that I kind of nurtured in college was that nobody would stop me from doing what I wanted to do. So it was, that has since stopped, but I'll continue. But I was always, my interests were about, and it's really a loose term in terms of creating, but my interests were always about creating. So it was never about, like somebody could never tell me exactly what I wanted to do. So when I left, I really I tried to continue that feeling, and so that meant doing my own plays, working with people, in different theater companies, creating my own theater company. That actually happened later on with my wife, but that really that was the idea. So the idea was just to keep on creating and not ever thinking about like, I need an agent, or I need people to see me, or that never occurred to me. It was just about doing what I loved to do. And that became about studying too, because studying was such a huge part of what I did as a younger actor. And that was really some of the most fun I ever had. But finding teachers that I was interested in and studying with them and being more specific, and things just kind of got specific as time went on. But it didn't start like that. It just became like that. So to me, it was always about doing. It wasn't about how to do it. It was just doing it. There was never a question question of how to do it. It was just about doing it.
Because you were very concentrated on the craft, and I always wonder, like, nowadays, like back then, getting an acting teacher, it's not like today. You can type in a Yelp review and see 87 different good or bad things. Did you have to audit a lot of classes, or did you go by a lot of word of mouth, or how would you find a good acting teacher as a young actor?
I was really lucky. I had John Turturro went to the college that I went to, and I kind of followed him.
So he got you going?
He got me going. I mean, I really, he got me going. And, when you kind of leave, if other people are going to New York with you, you just word of mouth, you hear people, I tried lots of different people, and, I didn't like a lot of acting teachers that I kind of met. I didn't know exactly what I wanted, but I found what I needed for sure. And that really just kind of that just kind of happened. There was no thought process involved. I mean, it was about, it was basically, I need to study, and I need to get better, and how do I do that? And let me take an acting class. And I didn't go the route of HB Studios, and I didn't go the route of kind of these people that were known, I guess, as very kind of famous acting teachers. I went a different route, and it was for me, in the long run, a much better place to be, because these people taught me what I really needed to learn to be. If I'm good at all, how to be good.
So you're working on your chops. You're getting this craft down. You're creating, and you have the right attitude. I mean, that's why I think a lot of people always will go into it looking in the other ways as a business aspect. When do you finally get into the business side? When do you sit there and start looking for work?
Yeah. So when I was, I would say, trying to remember, I think when I met my wife, I feel like that because we started doing things together, and so we really we met each other actually in an acting class, and we kind of started doing things together. But I think that there was she really pushed me to kind of be more business savvy about things, and she pushed me to. I was at a wedding actually and there were these people there that she said you should talk to these people because they could help you get into the Williamstown Theater Festival. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't even really know what the Williamstown Theater Festival was.
Right.
And she was like, it'll be a good place. Fantastic. And at the time, actually, I was being offered to do to work at Shakespeare and Company, which is on the East Coast. And I had no real interest in working with Shakespeare Company, but it was like a summer of like, okay, I'll do that. And I met this woman who was an associate artistic director of this woman, Bonnie Monty, who runs, I think, New Jersey Shakespeare Festival at the moment. And she, we hit it off, and she said, why don't you come in and audition? And so I auditioned for the festival and got into the festival, and then ended up doing it was just by chance, ended up doing a play at the festival, and an Arthur Miller play directed by Austin Pendleton. And it just happened to be a good thing at the right time, right place. And this agent saw me and wanted to represent me. And this person that was my agent then has become my manager and is still my manager almost 30 years later.
Wow, that's good. You love when you hear stories like that because it means they're doing something right.
Doing something right. So I mean, I think so. The business. I mean, I've always been. I'm much more business minded now than I was then. I mean, then it was not like it wasn't a question of business. It was just a question of doing stuff. And I mean, and you don't. I mean, then you're not thinking about money. Then you're thinking about just being on stage or being in a movie or and at that time it was you looked at Backstage and you saw advertisements for shorts and for student films, and you would do those, and we had a theater company, so we just constantly did plays all the time, and we both would direct, or we both would write, or not both of us would write, but my wife would write, and so it just constantly built upon itself. And then we started meeting people, and then other people started hiring you, and then you started doing other things, and all of a sudden you found yourself on a TV show, and all of a sudden you found yourself in a movie, and things just started growing.
Now, what was your first movie break? The first movie you got, because you look at IMDb, but you can never tell. Like it says, here your first one of your list is Jacob's Ladder.
What?
No, when you look at IMDb, the first credit is Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, I would say there were a few before that would never, like IMDb would never even recognize as a movie, but there were a bunch before that, and I would say that because I was making them pretty early on, but Jacob's Ladder was definitely one of the first, with big, huge studio movies. And that was it was a fantastic experience.
Yeah, where did that shoot? You gotta tell me about that, because it's like you're a staged guy and you're doing, it is a big production. Where did that shoot, and what made it a great experience?
It was in New York. We shot in New York, and what made it a great experience was Adrian Lyne, who directed it, and he was one of the nicest people I've ever met. And he basically he taught me how to act on camera. And I think I've been trying to listen to him ever since. And he really taught me about subtlety and about nuance and about what the camera actually picks up, and how he wanted me to approach something. And he and it was just fantastic. It was really great, and it was a wonderful experience that way. So that's why it was great, and it was great because I think it was one of the first times that I spent most of my time in a trailer and making an enormous amount of money and saying to myself, "Wow, this is actually kind of cool," and not and saying, just kind of like, "Wow, I don't get it." They keep on telling me to get ready, and then all of a sudden I'm just waiting, and as the time goes on, I'm making more money.
See, I think you can't beat that. And it must be, as I say when I talk to a lot of actors, that they're, when they start working on the projects after doing a lot of time on theater, like theater beats the crap out of you. When you do 5 shows a week or whatever, and then when a movie, as you said, it's a lot of sit around and wait. It must be a different feeling, but it also, you feel like you're sitting there going, man, I just want to get out there and act.
Yeah, now I feel that way. I didn't feel that way then. I think now I'm like really, I hate waiting. But yeah, you're just to go back to, the stage is the same way, because you're waiting all day to go on stage. So there's no real difference that way. In film, not as much television, because television you don't wait around as long. But in film, you really have to understand what it is to relax and wait and keep fresh and know that it's going to be okay when you get out there, and you have time to kind of build on stuff. And it's very, very such a different process than I used to think that it was the same, but it's not.
Now, as a younger actor, what kind of roles were you getting called for? What did you see a pattern? Were you getting cop roles, or boyfriend roles, or lawyer roles, or detective roles? What was in the earlier part of your career? What was some of the stuff you were getting?
Bad guys.
But now, did you like playing bad guys?
Yeah, I loved it. It actually wasn't until the Gilmore Girls where people started seeing me not as a bad guy. And but it was mainly bad guys. It was just like a lot of I loved it. It depends how it's written. You know what I mean? It's like if David Milch writes a bad guy, he's complicated, and there's so much more to him than just being a villain. Most of the time, villains I think that, if I bring anything to a role, it's everything is complicated, nothing is simple. So I'm going to bring a lot more. I mean, that's actually that's a difficulty, because I feel like things aren't always written so complicated, but I see them as complicated. And to me, it's not interesting if it's not complicated. It's like, I'd rather not do it. But I will do it because we all need money. But
right.
it's that becomes the difficulty. But I think that I don't care what it is. I mean, I don't care if it's a bad guy, if it's a good guy, if it's a romantic lead, if it's if he has I really could care less. I don't care who it is, what they've done. I have no judgment on any character ever. I could go from playing, the most evil human being that's ever existed on Earth, and find the humanness in him or her, and that is my task. That is the job that I am set out to do, because I feel like that everybody does have a humanity in them, and everybody suffers from the human condition. And it's my job as an actor to provide that for every character that I would play.
Now, when you were acting after Jacob's Ladder and stuff like that, were you staying in New York, or were you getting out to L.A., or because
always getting out, always taking trips to L.A. I've never lived in L.A. ever. I've spent maybe 9 months to a year out there working, but I've never lived there. Always based in New York.
So that's okay. So you were in New York. You were getting. I know you did some NYPD Blues. Now, how did that come about? You mentioned David Milch earlier.
I did actually NYPD Blue early on, like in the early '90s, and played this great part. Then I'm not even sure how David Milch knew who I was, actually, to be honest, or Stephen Bochco. But they much later on in the early noughts, in the early 2000s, they cast me in this part that was brilliant, so I'm not really sure how it happened. I mean, but working for David Milch was one of the highlights of my career. I don't think there's ever been, or ever will be, maybe Patty Chayefsky, a better TV writer. David Simons, maybe, not even David Chase. I think that David Milch is a genius, and I think that he will always be. I think that he. It's not about just telling a story. It's about engaging in people, writing character that is so complicated and so intricate, and his use of language is absolutely brilliant. I mean, he's a Shakespeare, but has had not as much luck as Shakespeare has.
What is it like as an actor when you actually? Because I've heard people say who also worked on Deadwood about just working with Milch is amazing. What is it like as an actor when you look at a script like that? And it's so well written. I mean, it must just be a great feeling, and you must sit there and also feel a little pressure that says, I got to deliver this stuff, because this stuff is the shit we work for. Yeah.
I mean, I think that, you do feel pressure to do that, but David makes you feel so comfortable that, it just becomes part of the world. And, he doesn't care if you make mistakes. You just repeat yourself and do it over and over and over again. I mean, I remember there was one time when I was working on the show on NYPD Blue. I had I was finished with it. This when they were shooting it on film, and I had shot this scene, and I was done for the night, and I was actually in a cab heading to the airport, about to go back from LA to New York, and this was about midnight. Right? I was taking a red eye back to New York. And I got a call, not on a cell phone, on a car phone. I got a call saying, tell the driver to turn around, stop the car, turn around, and come back to the set. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm on my way home. David wrote more pages. He wants you to come back in and do this other scene. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. So I turned around, came back on set, got dressed, went through hair and makeup, went through everything. This is about 1 o'clock in the morning. I was handed a 3-page monologue. And I was like, holy fuck, how am I supposed to do this? And Kim Delaney was with me, and she was like, don't worry about it. The camera will just roll. You get what you get. Don't get what you don't get, and just keep on doing it and keep on doing it. And we spent about 3 hours there, and I just kept on doing it and doing it, and eventually we got it. And, and that was it. I mean, and it was one of the most exhilarating moments I've ever had, because it was so demanding, and I just had to figure out a way. There was no other choice. I had to memorize what I was doing, and and if I made a mistake, go back and do it again, and do it again and do it again. And nobody judged it. Nobody complained about it. Nobody said anything other than, excellent job, let's move on, when it was over. It was, absolutely brilliant.
See, that must be a great feeling. I mean, that's like, when you always hear, like, I'm a baseball fan, so, when people get up to play with the bigs, you have a good career, but then you do something like that, and it's like the bottom of the ninth with the bases loaded, and you knock it out of the park.
Exactly. So that's how you feel, kind of like.
So you're doing that, and you're getting the detective roles and stuff like that. So then the Gilmore Girls come up. Now, a friend of mine, his wife played Gypsy, and the Gilmore Girls are just, they're fans. I mean, they're like very rabid fans. It's like,
yeah.
What was, when you read for that, did you think you were going to be part of this big show that had such a cult following? Because it was sort of a different kind of show. You didn't think it was on a network. I don't know. It's just weird. What was the feeling when you went into that set? Did you think it was going to end up having this huge following?
Well, first, I didn't audition for it. They offered it to me, and I kept on turning them down.
Why?
I had just done something. I forget what I had just done, and I wasn't interested. I totally was like, no. And they kept on coming back, and they kept on saying yes. And they kept on upping the money and upping the money. I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I had no idea what it would become. I enjoyed it for, I think I did 1 or 2 episodes at first, and then really, just fell in love with Amy Sherman Palladino and thought she was really amazing and fantastic. And she started writing for me, so it was, that was, I think, more of it. So it wasn't like, there was a portion of it, when you're doing a show like that, and then somebody really takes a liking to you, and they really develop a character based on what you're doing. I mean, there's no greater feeling than that. And because you feel so respected as an actor, and you feel respected as a human being, and you feel respected as an artist, because whatever you're bringing to the table, they love it, and so they're continuing to write for it. And I didn't really think about, I never imagined that it was going to be, at the time, I remember the first season, they didn't even know if they were going to get picked up for a back nine, or, it's like, I think I was on set when they got picked up for the back nine, for the 22 episodes, and that was like a huge deal. I think it was Lauren Graham's first show that she was like, oh my God, I can't believe it, I'm doing 22 episodes. It's not till way afterwards that it became, and actually the real it was always kind of huge, but then when they started airing on Netflix again recently, that's when it even became, it got a whole new audience. I'm sure when they release these the ones that they just did, it's going to get really big again.
Now, did people start recognizing you because of that role? And I didn't watch the show. I don't know if you were a good guy or a bad guy. I know you're the love interest. I don't know if you broke her heart. I'll be honest. But
nobody's a bad guy in that show.
Okay, so were people recognizing you a lot more now, and probably a different type of crowd, where someone who is recognizing you from NYPD Blue and says, "Oh yeah, it must have been," and it must be weird for an actor when all of a sudden you go from having probably the New Yorker guys going, "Hey, we love you in that show," to young girls going, "Oh my God, we really like you on that show."
Right. It's not weird. It is what it is. But it's not. I think the people that watch NYPD Blue watch NYPD Blue. The people that watch Gilmore Girls watch Gilmore Girls. I don't think it crossed that much.
Right. I'm saying so you have two different crowd groups.
Yeah, so you would be recognized. I mean, you get recognized for different things. And, I mean, Gilmore Girls is just, it's remained, so much. Like, that's, I mean, we're talking like almost 15 years ago that I started on that show, and people still recognize, like, that's how much that's continued. I mean, NYPD Blue, it's not like people are, I think there are websites about the character on NYPD Blue, but it's not like Gilmore Girls is just, it's consistent and it's constant.
Well, it's good because NYPD Blue is on a cable station out here. I think it's called Heroes and Icons, which it's good because people can start watching it now. Because you sit there, there's certain shows you didn't see a lot. You didn't see a lot of NYPD Blue, and the show Heroes and Icons was also playing The White Shadow, which you never see that on. So it was they have some good shows that people start watching that more.
That's cool.
So now the Gilmore Girls gets done, and now where do you go as an actor now? Because you've played the romantic lead, but as an actor, what kind of roles do you want to play at that point of your career?
Well, after all that, I kind of got caught up. Oh, actually, no. I mean, I've always wanted to play darker characters, and I had the opportunity to play this show on Showtime called Street Time.
Right.
And that really was that also was a highlight. I mean, because I was introduced to people that I was so happy to get to work with. Richard Stratton, who created the show, Mark Levin, who executive produced and ran the show, and worked with Rob Morrow and Terrence Howard and Erica Alexander, and my wife, who actually wrote some episodes. And so it was really kind of an experience that was so special, that lasted over 3 years, and a great character that, again, I was being written for, and all my ideas and what I thought should be part of the show became part of the show, and I would say that happened, and nothing necessarily changes your life, but it had a great influence on how I saw everything else that came after that.
How is that? Well, explain that.
The way we did that show was so experimental and so kind of free. We improvised an enormous amount, and we shot as we improvised. And we improvised because we felt like, as shows were being written, we felt like certain things needed to be added or subtracted or explored in the show itself. So we would kind of set up scenarios where we would have to just kind of improvise through the scene and figure out if we can get to a new place in the story arc to be able to satisfy something that was missing in the story. And so that became a huge part of how we did the show. Not necessarily to the liking of the studio or the network, but we did it, and we were yelled at a lot, but we did it anyway. And with that, we kind of developed a sense of trust between the creators and the writers and the actors, where everyone was able to kind of do that all at the same time, and be involved in the writer's room, and be involved in how the characters were progressing and where you wanted to see them in the end, and that really, it was just so exhilarating and so freeing. And so when I go back to when I was talking about creating, this was a show that was allowed me to do that, and which is so it's anathema to how the system works in TV. In TV, the writer's in charge, and it's very, very common that the actor never talks to the writers. And it's like you get your pages, and you can maybe have a conversation with the writer before you might shoot something, but that's very hard to do because usually they're really busy, and you pretty much you might have you have very few arguments, very few debates, and I mean, one, because it's so fast paced that you don't always have that ability to do that, but two, because that's just the way that particular system has been created, where there's a real separation between talent and writing, and it's I don't agree with it, and I don't think it's necessary, but that's the way it is, and it's because I also don't think that, I think that what happens in the writers have an idea of how a show is supposed to kind of pan out, but only but actors have, they're able to bring something to the writer that might not necessarily be thought of to the writer. So it's like, to me, it should be a conversation, but that's not necessarily how it goes. Anyway, so that's basically what that show did for me, and so it spoiled me, because everything that came after that, is not like that. So it really became like, wow, I don't understand why, how come I can't talk to the writer? How come I have to call somebody to change this word? How come I have to make sure it's okay if I change this word? It doesn't make sense to me. It's like, how come I can't add something to this? And, you were always kind of, in TV, you're always really, hindered by, of how it works, not necessarily of what's working. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, also, what's it like working with your wife when she's writing for you? Because she knows you so well. I mean, you guys have been married for a long time. Is it sometimes, do you sit there? I mean, if you don't like something she writes, do you guys talk about it? Like on that show, she wrote some episodes.
Yep. No, we talk about it, and she tells me what she's trying to get to, and I try to tell her what I'm trying to get to, and she's much deeper than I, so I usually see it her way in the end. But she knows me better than anybody. So if I'm having trouble with something, she's capable of saying, "Oh, try this," and it'll work. You know what I mean?
Right. So now what happened with Street Time? Did it just did it run its course, or what happened? Why did Showtime?
Yeah, we shot 2 seasons, and it got Bob Greenblatt came into Showtime. Jerry Offsay left, and Bob Greenblatt came in. He took it over, and he canceled the show.
That must be hard, for the fact that, I mean, you've always worked, and as we see, you constantly work. But as you said, it was such a great experience, and when you left it, you said, "I'm not going to find something like that." But how do you prepare yourself then for upcoming roles? Because you're sitting there, you had, for you, one of your best experiences, and it's one of those things you don't know if anything's going to match that. How, as an actor, did you prepare for that when you go into a series? I mean, do you, first few days, do you feel like there's a little loss of expectation?
No, you are always taken by surprise. It is never. It always sucks. You always take it personally. You always think it's your fault. What could I have done differently? You hate everybody for a second. It's a miserable situation. It is the idea of auditioning and not getting something magnified by 100,000, because you put all your eggs in this one basket, and it's but there's no way around it to be okay about it, because it hurts, because you feel like, how come everybody that loved you 2 seconds ago doesn't love you anymore, and it's you're back to ground zero, and you have to figure out, okay, how do I make money now? And, I was doing so well, and, all that kind of stuff. And if it's a great show and you really love being on it, then it's about, this was such a great show, and I really love being on it. Now it's not here anymore. It's like, and I love everybody that's attached to it. It's a terrible situation, and there's no way you can prepare for it. I've had it happen to me where, it's going to happen. I just did this show called Allegiance, and I knew from the first episode that it aired that it was going to happen. And
Why?
Still, when it happened, it was a shock.
Why did you think? Why did you think it would happen for that show?
Because the viewership from the very beginning was so low. So it was like, okay, well, this is not going to. They're not going to support this. Nobody gets supported anymore. So it's like, I mean, they have to. Maybe they'll move us. Maybe they'll move us to a different time. So you go through, a variety of scenarios where you're like trying to figure out, maybe they could do this, maybe we could do that. But it's still a shock. I mean, and then I've had it happen where I have no idea it's happening, and I get a phone call on my way to a studio and saying, your show's canceled, and you're like, what? I'm on my way to the studio to shoot right now. So it's never it's always a shock, and you can never be prepared for it. Anybody who tells you that it's okay, they're lying. It's just not true. it's a terrible, sad position to be in, and especially for us who work from job to job. I mean, if I knew that 3 movies were coming up, a play and another TV show, I'd be like, oh, who cares? But that's not the way it works. The way it works is that you go from job to job pretty much, and you have to figure out what to do with your life. I mean, you have very clear purpose when you're working, and then as you have to recreate, and it's very hard to do.
Well, I think, and also what bothers me about TV lately is, it seems, and you've been in the business for a long time, it seems like they used to give shows a chance. And now, if it doesn't get the ratings, they'll pull it after a few episodes. And that always confuses me because, especially when, they have a bunch of episodes in the can, it's like, just play them. You already paid for it, and people don't feel like watching reruns. I mean, that must be frustrated if you're an actor. I mean, you already get paid, but that those shows, and the people who actually do watch it will never get to see what happened.
Yeah, I've had that happen a lot of times. I mean, it's a drag. It's because you feel like you're doing good work, and you feel like it should be seen, and you have no idea why people are not giving it an opportunity. But it's like it's a catch-22. It's like you can't really I mean, as much as I say it sucks, and no one's really affected. I mean, everyone's affected by it, and it's impossible to kind of ignore. You have to kind of there's a huge psychological safety net that you have to create for yourself that basically says you did your best work. You did great work. You came to set every day. You worked. You researched the material. You tried to figure out how to do it the right way, and it just didn't work out. And you have no control over it. It's completely out of your control why a network or a studio might fire you or might not want a show to continue. So it's like you have to kind of build this safety net around yourself. But it's that it's impossible to kind of gauge. I mean, I've been on great shows that get canceled. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, even shows that do well, I've been canceled. So it's so hard to figure out.
It must be hard because I know you were on Law and Order Trial by Jury.
Yeah, that was like a. I mean, I was told by everybody in the business, in the industry, on that show, this is a no-brainer. This is going to continue for a lifetime. Don't worry. Buy a house, buy a car, have a kid. I mean, this was like, and then I got a phone call saying we're canceled, and I was like, what?
And yeah, you think it's a Law and Order show. I mean,
yeah, and they did pretty well. I mean, considering, at that time, the numbers were good. It's so, you just have no idea. And you also don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You don't know what's happening with other actors or writers or executives. You have no clue as to, it's just like auditioning. You have no clue what somebody's looking for. You can only do yourself, and you could just be who you are and just kind of walk in, and do your thing and not really, if you think about, what you're not doing as opposed to what you're just doing, you'll drive yourself crazy, which happens, and people kind of lose sight of what it is they really the thing that makes them really good.
So as you're acting, you've been acting over the years. After all these series and after like that show, do they still have you audition? Because you have like a long list of guest roles. I mean, that are just great shows. I mean, do they just know you now, or did you have to still go back in the room, or how does that work? Because once you have a name and a face, or do they sit there and go, well, there's also 4 guys like him who have had series? How does that happen?
Sometimes it's a straight offer. Sometimes you have to go back in the room. To be honest with you, my ego wants to be offered everything. My my sense as an actor is I want to be in the room. It's kind of an odd situation. I'm one of the few people I think that love to audition. I love auditioning.
Why?
I just find it to be an opportunity to kind of when you audition, you're probably doing your best work. When you get on set, it's probably not as good as when you audition, because you'll never have as much energy as you had in the audition room. And it's just so satisfying. I mean, not every time that you're doing it, it's satisfying, but it's a fun situation, and you're performing. So you're performing for people. You're not like doing it on, I mean, now it's like you do everything on tape, but which is so boring. But it's just a great opportunity. So to me, it's really fun. Plus, it's like, when you audition, it's just you. It's like whatever you come up with. You know what I mean? It's like nobody's directing you. So it's like, you just kind of do what you think is the right thing to do. Sometimes it's an offer, sometimes it's, sometimes you have to go back in the room.
Now, the tape process, I mean, you said, it seems like you really, as you said, you like to perform live, but the tape process must be great for someone who lives in New York, so you don't have to go somewhere else, and you find out if you're going to get booked.
Yeah, it definitely has become an easier process, and I could do it anywhere. You try to put up the best lights you can, because the older you get, you want to look better. But it's the process that actually I think that has become so great in terms of taping is testing for TV shows, which now they're just taking tape. It used to be where you walk into like a theater and you test in front of 50, 60 people. But now I've tested just from tape, and from like the first tape that I've done, and so which I actually find really kind of good, because it's just your instinct. Your instinct kind of, if they like what you did on tape, with your instinct, you're not going to get notes that are going to adjust your performance that much. So it's better to just kind of, does this guy have the essence of what we're looking for, or does he not have the essence of what? So there's an advantage to that, also a disadvantage, but a great advantage in terms of taping. One, because you could tape over and over and over again, and nobody will ever know that you've done it a million times. You're just showing them one version. So you get, I do tapes. My wife tapes me. I go into my manager's office, they tape me, or my agent's office, they tape me. And I could spend an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes on a thing, and I'll do it, 50 times. And if it's until it's right, it's not going to go out. You know what I mean?
Now I got a question. You're this in all the hour dramas. You've been working them all. How did Curb Your Enthusiasm come up?
Curb Your Enthusiasm happened. I auditioned for it. I was told I didn't get it, and then about a half a day after I was told I didn't get it, I got a phone call saying they want you. It just happened. They asked me to improvise the kind of the character that that ended up getting shot. Or getting used, but not the same character, because they audition you with one thing and then they actually do another thing, because they don't tell you what you're going to be, and that's how it happened. And I think I actually had this conversation with my wife, saying, I have to tell Larry David that I think that he's a genius, and that he changed the face of comedy. And I just think that he's one of the greatest. And I auditioned, and I was walking out the room, and I thought to myself, if I'm not man enough to say what I want to say, then if I walk out of this room, I should never walk into any room ever again. And so I all of a sudden, I was about to walk out the door. I turned around, and I walked up to him, and I just say, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you this. I've been thinking about it forever. You're one of the greatest. You've changed the face of comedy. I'm so, like all that kind of stuff. And so maybe that's what did it. I'm not sure.
So did you like doing comedy? Because, I mean, is it something you want to try to branch into?
I've done sitcoms. I've done a bunch of sitcoms, and I had great times doing them. I mean, they were to be. I did a sitcom for Amy Sherman Palladino, and that was really fun with Parker Posey. And I did a sitcom that never actually aired with oh shit, what's his name? Oh gosh, John Cho. And I'm trying to think of the writers. I'm spacing out. He does Modern Family.
Oh, Steve Levitan? Steve
No,
Levitan? Oh.
no. He runs it. He didn't create it. Anyway, Danny Zucker. It was just the right thing at the right time with the right people, and they understood my kind of sense of humor and how I do it, and which I don't think is all that different from anybody else. But I wouldn't consider myself a sitcom actor or a comedian really. But I have done it and love it, and Curb Your Enthusiasm I think was definitely a different kind of comedy. And I just tried my best and hung on.
Now, do you write anything with your wife at all? Do you ever try to collaborate with her writing, or is it she's the writer and you're the actor?
We definitely collaborate, and we have a TV show that we're trying to do at the moment. We have done lots of plays together where she's written and I've acted in, and we've done a short movie, we've done like little videos, but we've done like a real short movie where she's kind of directed and wrote. But yeah, we collaborate. Yeah, totally.
And so now you're also on a few episodes of Billions. Now that was shot in New York. Do you love it when you get cast in something that's shot in New York, or do you like to get away sometimes to shoot in different locations?
I like to shoot in different locations.
What are some of your favorite locations?
Prague.
Well,
Switzerland. Poland.
So what have you shot there? Movies?
Yeah, movies, TV series.
See, that'd be
what?
No, that'd be great. I mean, you got to love that you get to work and get to travel.
New Orleans. Yeah, I mean, one of the great things is being able to travel. There's so much shooting in New York now, though. It's like it's actually hard to get people to. It's like you're kind of hired for everything that's in New York. Yeah.
Now, do you get on stage anymore, or is it just because you're so busy in?
Stage has to be like the perfect storm. It has to be the right play, right timing. Doing a play is so hard, and I am not interested unless it's something I am so dying to do. I'm not interested in putting that kind of time into it.
Well, I mean, it's got, and plus, it's a matter of it's a lot of work, and it's like, as you said, if it's not something great, what would a play that you would love to do? Is there any plays that out there?
I just want to say that the plays are, it's 24 hours a day. There is nothing releasing you from doing a play. You are committed 24 hours a day. It is so intense, and I just don't really. It's not interesting to me unless I'm just dying to do it. To really, like, I'm not just into doing any play. I would say I don't really have a play off the top of my head that would be like that type of play. I mean, it'd be great if one of my wife's plays were produced, and to do one of those at the moment. It would be great to do. If something like All My Son, like an Arthur Miller play came up and that was in the right place, that would be something I would be really interested in doing. So that I'm not like, yeah.
We're running out of time. I gotta ask you this though, because I asked my guest this. You've been in tons of IMDb credits.
Yeah.
Have you been killed a lot? I always love when people tell me stories because you play the bad guy sometimes. So you got to be. Have you been killed a lot?
Yeah,
what was your best death?
My best death. I don't know what my best death was, but I think my first death was in a movie with Judge Reinhold, where we were shot. And it must have been like 5 below zero, 10 below zero in Canada, and we had one take to do this. And stupidly, I told them that I was totally fine, and they were shooting. It was a wide shot. There could be nothing underneath me, I get shot, and I have to go down, I got shot, and it was the first time that I had squibs on my body, and I remember them going off, and I remember looking at them going off my body, and there was such a delayed reaction between me actually going down and as if I died, and me experiencing like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is so insane. There's actually like blood spurting out of my body, and I'm having these things explode off my body, and but they had to cut around it because they couldn't shoot it again. It was hysterical. So that was my first death scene. And then my first shooting scene, I forget actually what this was in, but I remember my first shooting scene where you don't actually shoot the gun and just you kind of just you just kind of make the motion or whatever. And I remember the DP coming up to me after we shot, saying to me, "Scott, listen, it's important that when you're shooting the gun, you don't say bam, bam, bam while you're shooting it. That kind of doesn't make sense." I was like, what? Am I doing that? I said, yeah, you're doing that. So that was my first shooting scene. So you could tell I wasn't used to shooting guns by any stretch of the imagination.
But now I bet dying is easier, and so is shooting a gun.
Dying is easier, yeah. But now I've learned since then that you need pads and all kinds of things, or have somebody else die for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first dying scene.
So now, what's coming up? What can we see you on in the near future?
I have this movie coming out called As You Are, which is directed by Miles Joris Pay-Per-Feet, which won jury prize at Sundance this year. That's a real bad guy. And right now I'm pitching. I'm kind of taking a break because I'm really kind of waiting for the right thing to come up. So I'm trying not to do any episodic stuff, and really trying to wait for something pitch perfect. But at the moment I'm pitching television series, so that's why I was in LA last week.
Well, cool. So now, do you Twitter? Do you tweet?
I do, yeah. Sometimes, yeah.
What's your Twitter handle?
Scott E. Cohen. SCOTTECOHEN.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I'm glad we figured it out because people, we had
Sorry.
the Skype problem. No, it's funny because you never know. Because if someone isn't, I thought you could just call anybody, but if you're not contacts, you can't call.
You can't get in.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
So people, go IMDb Scott and go find all his old work. Follow him on Twitter. It's Scott E. Cohen. Follow me on Twitter. It's at Cooper Talk. That's at Cooper Talk. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. I have 527 episodes up, and you can check them out. So please do that. And yeah, keep listening. My email is cooper@coopertalk.net. The Twitter is Cooper, as I said, Cooper Talk. Facebook, Cooper Talk Radio, or just Steve Cooper, and Instagram and the Words with Friends. It's Cooper Talk 1. And don't forget my other website, stopthesalt.com. When I went through that heart problem, I had to sit there and go to the hospital a lot. So I wrote a cookbook, 120 low sodium recipes. Go buy it. You can buy it at barnesandnoble.com. You can buy it at amazon.com. But if you buy it from me, it's cheaper. So go to stopthesalt.com. So remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins. You guys have a great 4th of July weekend because you know what? Drive safe. I'm out in California. I miss the Jersey beaches. I swear, but I'll play Springsteen Independence Day a bunch of time, and I'll play Sandy 4th of July a bunch of the time. So please be safe. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins. I will talk to you guys next week.